have a quorum.
All right. We'll call the meeting of the Human Resources, Finance, and Property Committee to order. We have a quorum. Are there any public comments? Anybody wish to make a public comment? Anybody wish to make a public comment? If not, we will close the public comment period and move on to the approval of the minutes for both the May 25th and the June 8th meeting, which were in your packets. What are your wishes?
McEwen, make a motion to approve.
Moved by Gibbs, seconded by McEwen. To approve the minutes, is there any discussion? Additions, corrections? If not, all those in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries. Educational presentations. The American Rescue Plan update. At the last meeting, we talked about the having the public engagement process, and I was going to do a doodle poll and I didn't. I realized that Tasha was on vacation, who was, all things stop when she's on vacation. So I thought we would, just refreshing everybody's, we had agreed that we would roll out a public engagement process and start with the Towns Association at their joint meeting at Rib River, which will be primarily more of a presentation, and then we would be available to answer follow-up questions after that meeting. But then we were looking at meetings in Hatley, Edgar, and Wausau. We would look at the Hatley Library Municipal Building. I have a call in to the Edgar School District. They're going to get back to me. And then we would probably use this room in the city of Wausau for that informational meeting. We would also look to have an online presence with some information. We could do it like we did with the county board. Size, where we recorded the information and made it available and gave people an opportunity to comment at a later date. But I'm looking at dates, and if you would open up your calendars, if we start and wanted to start with the Towns Association on the 29th, we would then be looking at the following weeks. I don't think we have to do it in a week. I think we're still learning what the Department of Revenue is, their final rule, their interim final rule will have been in place for 60 days. Hopefully we'll have a final rule, and we're seeing more clarification. We'll have a better understanding of both what the policy is on lost revenue and what that might mean to us and what flexibility that may or may not give us by that period of time. So we had a one-time looked at the 3rd of August as a potential date in Edgar. I think if we could get dates and then look at the facilities while we hear back from, I'm trying to think of Jim's last name out in Edgar, but he's going to get back to me with their availability. And then Hatley is generally available most of the time. And then this room, we can work around other schedules. So would the 3rd work for a hearing?
What time are you looking at?
What time do we can do would we be interested in doing a 4:30 one? I don't know when the public comes, because they don't always come at night, particularly in the summer. What are your thoughts? 4:30, 5:30, 6. Any thoughts?
Supervisor Fischer here.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
For a trip out to Hatley, 5:30 would work best, at least for me anyway. That way, have time to end work and include travel versus something a little earlier than that.
Are we talking about Edgar or Hatley?
Well, I think what we'll try to do is set the start time for all of them about the same. if that makes
Okay,
sense. Would 5:30 work?
sure.
That
For me.
works with Supervisor Lee.
Kurt?
I can make 5:30 work.
All right, we'll, to be determined, based upon Edgar's availability. If Edgar's available, we will do it in Edgar. If not, we will look at Hatley or here. I might suggest maybe that maybe the second one should be here and we could tape it. Because it's gonna be difficult to tape it at Rib River, so. We'll get back to you with the location. So if we, then, I don't want to conflict with other standing committees, which would be meeting later in the week on the 4th and the 5th. That would take us into the following week. We could do the 10th. We could do a hearing after our regular committee meeting here, if that would make sense. So that
So
would be,
you're talking on the 3rd?
no, the 3rd, we would be in either Hatley or Edgar. The 10th, we would do Wausau, but we would do it at the conclusion of our normally scheduled Human Resources, Finance, and Property Committee. So we would pick a time, 5:30, and just do that hearing that day in the Assembly Chamber.
Supervisor Lee.
Go ahead,
I,
Alice.
I think that day would be fine, the 10th, just provided we have a fairly late agenda for our normal committee meeting. It's going to be a lot to talk about, and especially 14 questions and stuff. So I think having 2 really long meetings might be, we might not have at our best at that point.
We'll try to keep the regular committee agenda a little bit shorter that time to control that. And we've got the flexibility to move things to the 24th if they're not time critical. So I hear what you're saying, and we'll make sure we're all fresh. And then, so that's August. Those are August 3rd and August 10th. And then we need one more date for either Edgar or Hatley. We could do that on we could do it the next night on the 11th, or we could move it to the following week.
August 11th.
How would August 17th? Kurt said he'd like to spread it out, so if we looked at the 17th at 5:30,
That seems like it would work pretty well.
any objections? All right, we'll wait to hear back from Edgar Schools. We'll work around their schedule, and then we'll look at Hatley for the where it won't. So we'll do the 3rd, 10th, and 17th, beginning at 5:30, and that will give us a chance. And so we'll be doing it basically 4 weeks in a row, the 29th at the towns, and then going out in the others. That'll let us promote those at the annual meeting of the towns as well. So again, the thought would be we'd give an overview of the act, eligible activities, some definitions relative to what lost revenues will be, what the timelines are, and then we would look at the questions to drive the public comment. Any thoughts, questions? If not, we've got a plan. All right. Any other questions on the American Rescue Plan update, or any new information from Kurt, Lance?
There's been a little more clarification on a question and answer. that has been provided by NACO. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was mentioning that NACO's and there's been some clarifications on a question, commonly asked questions and answers on the NACO website. And so some of those clarifications provide a little more clarity around broadband. So I think there's always going to be continued opportunity for more clarification, even from the Treasury, on certain issues as far as eligibility and eligible uses. The WCA, NACO, multiple entities now have various programs that they've created in spreadsheets to generate some lost revenue calculations. One thing that was clarified was in talking to WCA was there was a little bit of a misunderstanding as to utilities, and revenue from utilities are excludable. However, there's been a clarification that solid waste and the revenue that is generated from there is not a utility and must be included as revenue in one of the calculations. So we need to be sure that we're following that guidelines as far as excludable income or includable income. And in this case, the revenue that's generated out of the solid waste department is income, even though it's a fund that is set aside, that is still gross revenue for the county when it's calculating lost revenue.
So are all enterprise accounts includable?
As far as I'm understanding, all enterprise funds are required to be included as part of the income. The only ones that are excludable are utilities. That in this case, Marathon County doesn't have any of those utilities, from what I'm understanding.
So do we know how the airport will be handled as a joint entity?
But I believe that's still, their revenue comes from Fed and fees, so I haven't asked that specific question, but a great question to ask, because if PFC, funds are significantly down, and if there's an allocation 40-60 as we allocate cost allocations, then our revenue would be down even greater. So it's something to get clarification on.
Any other questions? If not, thank you. We'll move on to broadband expansion opportunities. Wanted to bring to your attention some of the things that are going on. As you're aware, we have the Public Service Commission has announced a $100 million grant application process that will be completed or they're due July 27th. We had a meeting on the 14th with the internet service providers that serve the county. All were invited. We asked them to let us know if they are interested in partnering with us, what speeds they would be providing, the requirements, because the $100 million is a pass-through of the Federal American Rescue Plan Act with a 100 threshold, unless there's extenuating conditions, and it has to be scalable to that 100. There's a bias toward wired service in there, fixed service. But we've had some very interesting discussions with companies such as Bug Tussle and Charter and Scott Nyman from Wittenberg Tel and AirNet and others are all interested in possibilities of partnerships or other opportunities going forward. And so we're We've given them until, again, July 2nd to let us know if they're interested in partnering, what that will be, what they're looking for the county to provide in terms of a match. And we have that $177,000 left in the capital improvement plan, but we may have requests that go beyond that, so we'll need to keep you in the loop. In addition to that, we will be having Scott Felt, the county administrator from Kewaunee County, come to the next broadband task force meeting on July 7th to talk about how they went about soliciting proposals from various internet service providers to serve the county. And there's a desire to try to comprehensively deal with all or portions of the county where we're underserved or unserved, and looking for partners to move ahead. So we will be doing that. But in some cases, we may be in a situation where we may have to make commitments to grant applications beyond what the budget is, and we may need to come back here and ask for additional authority. Again, there's no guarantee with the grant application that they will be funded. We had 3 grant applications submitted last round of the PSC, and only 1 was funded. But we still need to make sure that we have the capacity to cover it should the grant awards be made. In addition, there's the $153 million in the state budget. There will be I suspect, another grant cycle with state funds later this year. And so we'll need to look from a financing perspective what the county's role and involvement will be in that. And we just wanted to provide that overview and update to you to let you know that there's a lot in the works, and hopefully we gave a presentation to the Broadband Task Force yesterday, and we talked about the 2009 study, and I mentioned that not a lot has changed since 2009, but there is so much in the works that we're hopeful over the next year or two that we'll see a significant expansion in internet services to the rural areas of the county. So Kurt or Lance, anything you'd like to add?
I guess the one thing that we're starting to hear, with literally all of the federal funds that have been earmarked for broadband, and in fact, the American Rescue Plan money has a dedicated potential availability or dedicated use that it can be used for broadband expansion. Obviously, it's geared towards fiber to the home, but we're hearing from literally some of the internet providers right now that a supply chain issue may, in effect, actually start to rear its head in that one anecdotal information from one of the providers saying that if you order cable, fiber cable today, you're talking 17, 18 months out before you receive it. So, and obviously, with the amount of dollars that the American Rescue Plan put out there, the states and all counties looking to improve broadband because of the challenges that have been presented during the pandemic, the supply chain issue may be an issue. And obviously, with the deadlines for the American Rescue Plan dollars to be expended, may also create some unique challenges. So we need to be aware of them. However, I don't know that changes our process as we move forward with trying to improve the broadband capability in Marathon County.
Are there any questions or comments? If not, we will move on to operational functions. There is nothing under A, so we'll move on to B, discussion and possible action by committee to forward to the county board. Intergovernmental budget transfers. Christy, do you want to give an overview?
Yep, there's one. Doesn't have to go to county board because it lives in its own house, and just moving one money from one project to the other. If you give me just a second, I will grab that one. Yeah. I have one screen and too many things open on it, so give me just a second.
You needed 3 screens.
I do. So what happened is that we are just transferring money from within the same, if you take a look at the actual budget transfer, it's within the CIP borrow funds for the 2021 CIP, and we are just taking money that was from the juvenile facility roof replacement and moving it to a separate project that's already approved and within the CIP program itself, which is a jail gym skylight replacement. So we're just moving it from one project to another within an approved program, within the funded dollars that are borrowed that have to be used in this program anyway. So it's just a transfer at this level, and it does not need to go to the county board because it adds no levy or increased revenues.
What are your wishes?
Mr. Chairman, I guess question, are we putting off then the juvenile facility roof replacement? Is it under budget? Why do we have, or what's the disposition on that roof?
This is Craig with Facilities.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Yeah, the juvenile roof has been completed already, and we're taking leftover money from that project to use on the jail roof.
Thank you.
The jail roof came in over budget, so for the skylights.
Thank you. Motion to approve the budget transfer.
Second.
Moved and seconded, moved by Gibbs, seconded by Fischer. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries unanimously. Committee approval of the Facilities and Capital Management KIP request for inclusion in the 2022 KIP request process. Terry, we'll just turn it over to you?
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to actually our planners. They're the experts in this. So you want to just a little brief what it is or questions? How do you want to go about it?
I think in light of the dollars and lateness of the additions to the packet, if you could just give a high-level review of each of them.
Okay. I believe this is Craig again. I believe the first one on the packet is the house exterior envelope repairs for the connector link, and from the connector link south. So basically from the jail south, we'd be scope of the project would be to address the exterior envelope deficiencies. Typically, a masonry envelope should probably be addressed every 20 years, and it's been well over 20 years since that envelope has been addressed. Issues that would be taken care of would be caulking of the masonry cleaning, tuck pointing, masonry sealing, some painting, and window sealing. I guess onto the next page, the project will shift the exterior envelope, protecting the building from mold, mildew, deterioration, and rot. Existing caulking is leaking, and the exterior facade sealant is gone, so water is penetrating, causing cracking and deterioration. Water mix of salt is leaking through the parking lot joints and causing concrete structure deterioration. And with further deterioration, we're going to get lots of repairs if we keep letting that happen. Project cost. Came up with $657,261. At the end of the packet, I had a consultant come in, and they went through the building, and they listed areas of concern. Pictures in the packet. I guess I'm not sure how much more information you want?
Basically, it's going over the building just like we have the library this year. All your caulk joints, the missing grout, all those areas, that's what's happening currently with. So if you're getting water in there, all the panels that are hanging on the side of the courthouse, as the water gets in there in the wintertime, it freezes and pushes those farther open, which is causing leaks to the interior space. And those are, you want to stop any other, molds or things like that could have happened. It's a pretty large project to send through.
Are there any questions relative to this project?
I guess the only one question I have, and it's a general question on all the projects. I know we've got estimates in here. How confident are we with the cost of construction obviously going up significantly, that these estimates are good estimates, that we're not going to end up with a 20% under cost estimate on any of the all of the CIP projects. And again, I would totally understand, that these are just estimates, but has that been taken into consideration when we put these numbers together?
Yes, we looked at it when we got the numbers and we talked to the people giving them to us. The industry right now is looking at this thing turning around as far as increases in products. It looks like it's leveling out, and everybody is projecting that by the end of this year, things should be normal. So they're very confident in the prices that they gave us, that next year we should be at these prices or less. Now, I mean, anything can happen, but that is the thought process of the experts in the field right now.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I think what we'll do is we'll deal with all of these together in a motion. So if you want to go to the jail, HVAC at the jail, administration, and kitchen.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. This is Troy from Facilities. This project is it's a maintenance project to come in compliance with state regulations regarding ventilation and air circulation in the jail admin area, the offices, booking, and the kitchen area. Give you a brief background on this. They do not have the ventilation, natural ventilation anywhere, so they need mechanical ventilation, and none of these areas are in compliance, confirmed with the DSPS regulations that I have inside the packet, and the architect engineer that I got hired to design the plans for Marathon County. In 2013, there were 2 mini splits, basically air conditioning and heating units that were put inside the kitchen. They do not give little or any air circulation and ventilation. So we've been out of compliance since 2013. 2017, I completed a study to replace this system that was not forwarded. Was told that funding was the reason at the time, and it was not revisited until last year when we brought this in front of the CIP committee and ultimately everyone here at the HR Finance Committee. And at that point in time, we were given the go-ahead to get a design and solution for and an estimate for construction moving forward into this year. That being said, everything else that was looked at in here, again, we're out of compliance with state regulations on here, so there's not much more that needs to be said in there, but the dollars and cents that are requested, $1,011,765, includes all general construction, mechanical needed for getting everything basically up the freight elevator in pieces and assembled inside the mechanical rooms in the jail, installing the new HVAC units, replacing outdated pneumatic controls with new direct digital control systems to match up with the rest of the county, integration into the building automation system that we're already running within the county, and removing unused ductwork up in that area. pretty well cut and dried. I know there's plans and the estimate inside of there. Subject to any questions, that really is an overall summary of that project.
Any questions? Kurt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess two questions, Troy. One
Yes.
is, I know we have the potential of putting in UV filters and/or treatments in air exchangers, air handlers, and though, or at least some portion of that would qualify for ARPA funding. Has that is that been looked at, or has that been an option that's still being looked at, or is that included in this potential estimate?
Yes, Chairman Gibbs, that is correct. That has been considered. We looked at multiple options here, which would have been a filter system that could have been larger, upgrading from a higher MERV, a thicker filter basically, which would reduce the airflow, or going with ultraviolet. Those numbers are included within this budget.
So then, do we know, or maybe are we still analyzing if any or what portion of this project might qualify for ARPA funding?
I think that would be this committee's responsibility. So we would, I think that we'll get the projects in and figure out how we're going to fund it. So we'll talk about that later today. And
Absolutely, Chairman Robinson. I can get that broken out for you to help with that too. That's nothing. That'll take us an easy phone call to make sure that happens.
so I have a question then. So as a result of this, will we have a safer environment? Should we have another COVID-like situation, following up on Chair Gibbs' questions from just the perspective? I know we won't have any negative air rooms as a result of this project, or negative pressure rooms, will we?
Yes, we will,
There
Chairman
will be,
Robinson.
okay.
We will have a safer environment, and all those considerations were taken into effect straight through a checklist, all the way back through every project that is even ongoing currently.
Thank you. Other questions?
Yeah, Supervisor Fischer here.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
I appreciate the need to make sure that we're up to speed with compliance in these repairs, and not only this, but also the previous item with the outside of the county building. Is this something that we're currently tracking, that we could end up having? This investment would cover us in the nature of being up to compliance for a number of years, or is this more just getting us up to compliance and code as it is right now? So we're spending $1 million to get to where we need to be, or would this allow us to kind of get ahead of the game for the next few years?
This good question, Chairman Fischer. Yes, this gets us in compliance currently and for the foreseeable future. Now, I can't put a time frame on that, but this meets every code that is out there currently and looked at for the future under HVAC regulations.
Excellent, thank you.
Just to clear up where this is in the kitchen part of the jail air handler. At the current time, we are not exchanging any air.
Mm-hmm.
So the air that's there is just being conditioned and recirculated. That is against code. You need to be bringing in at least a 5, 7, 10%, depending on the temperature outside, of fresh air into the space. And when this equipment failed, the solution at the time was to just put in basically a home air conditioner on the wall. So this is bringing us back to compliance all the way around. It's pulling air currently now. The systems, because they're not working, are pulling systems from the cell blocks and trying to exhaust because they're doing dishes and things like that. So they're pulling all the air through areas that they're not supposed to be, down the hallways and things like that. So again, it's a very important project.
Any other questions? All right, then we'll move on to the next, North Central Healthcare Social Services retrofit.
Again, this is Troy. This is a project that we have looked at. It's the remodel and renovation of the Lakeview Drive facility for social services to move from their current location on Thomas Street to the Lakeview campus as part of the county master plan. We've taken into consideration what it's going to take into the buildings to get here in 2020. The CIP committee was approved, HR Finance approved an architecture and engineer to be brought on board for the campus to look at the master planning so we can reduce the number of county facilities. Included in the considerations as we looked at this, and right now this is part of, is this where we want to talk about how this is broken out into the three?
Sure.
Okay, so Chairman Robinson, what's happened here is you're looking at the next three projects coming up. This is the social services renovation of the campus. That part is getting social services moved off Thomas Street to an area inside of the Lakeview Center portion of the North Central Healthcare campus here currently as part of the master plan. The other projects that are included with that are broken out as such into the aquatic therapy center, which I'll speak about separately, and then parking lot reconditioning from all of to create additional parking spaces for the additional personnel here that are going to be brought down from the social services department, as well as repair and make the parking lot actually more flowable for traffic that's going through here. Included within this, we looked at this in a couple of different ways. There's another project behind this that falls in the maintenance category that's not included in here, but included in this scope is the demolition of Lakeview Center, the general construction for the remodel, including furniture, fixtures, and equipment, the IT requirements, moving costs, and construction and admin for everything here. Made the assumption that social services would be moving here within the near future, depending on when that would take place, and that we would be displacing two departments here at North Central Healthcare for that, and we would have construction take place while the buildings were currently in operation. I can keep rolling into the next projects, but is there anything else outside of that right now that you would have questions on as to what we looked at included in the price of $6,710,637?
Are there any questions? And we're anticipating this project will be completed by,
oh yeah, no, I'm sorry. This project would start right at the first of the year. Based on the fact that it's an inside project for remodeling and renovation, we don't have to slow down and stop because of it being January. We can start demolition and roll through and be completed by the end of 2022.
All right, any other questions? Chair Gibbs?
Troy, one of the questions, I guess, because the renovation is ongoing at NCHC currently, is it thought that the contractor potentially would be obviously bidding on potential this project and move right into that phase?
Chairman Gibbs, absolutely. We look at that as a consideration, but to be safe in looking at everything, we had to look at that as a standalone. Yes, we could look at that as that very same contractor could move into here, and they're already here on campus and could take part in that. But the estimate has that going out for open competition for our procurement rules, just to be on. That's what the estimate takes into consideration. It doesn't just anticipate that we would have certain cost savings going into here. We wanted to make sure that if we put this estimate forward, we didn't end up, oh my goodness, we're short. So we have it's set to accommodate starting fresh, if you will, with somebody else that wouldn't be here on campus. One thing I did fail to bring into here is that taken into consideration of this would be the sale of Thomas Street, and confirmed with Terry when we went offline briefly that that is a $3 million estimate on the property there to help offset the costs that would be incurred with this project.
Any questions?
Supervisor Fischer here.
Go ahead.
And that was actually one of my, I was just gonna question about the offsetting charge, setting this cost up, which obviously is building out the new space. Is it just the Thomas Street location, or would there be other locations that would be vacated to accommodate for this as well?
Excellent segue, actually, Supervisor Fischer. Those are the next projects that are coming along as we get down to the other parts of the renovation. Yes, that there will be other departments moving. This specifically deals with Thomas Street. We would also be looking at, as we get down into making conference centers into the portion of the building that would allow Marathon County to no longer have a requirement to have 212 River Drive, because those conference rooms would be replaced here. So there would be a sale of that facility offsetting and moving forward, but that's left into the other projects. I spoke only of the Thomas Street sale right now.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? If not, keep going.
Is it the parking lot or the conference center? That's the next one.
We've got the parking lot at 1808451.
This is all the social services. Like I said, this is the parking lot that surrounds 1000 and 1100 Lakeview Drive. For reference, the health department and facilities are currently in 1000 Lakeview Drive at Lakeview Center, and North Central Healthcare is in 1100 Lakeview Drive in the A&B buildings. As part of this process, we looked at, again, like I stated, the parking requirements and making the parking lot more easily navigable. If anyone's been down here, it's a little bit of a, I don't want to use the term Wild West, but there is some confusion that works with the current layout of the parking lot. What we've also seen down here in the 1100 parking lot, specifically with the amount of construction traffic that's gone through this area, that we're seeing just a general need. And the age of the parking lot, it's at the end of its useful life based on the last time any work was done with it, and it's been patchwork since then.
Any questions? If not, if you want to move on to the for lack of a better term, pool, or the pool.
The final portion of this, from the social services, parking lot, and renovations to the Lakeview Center, is the old aquatic therapy pool into the new therapy center for 1000 Lakeview Drive. Simply put, the scope of the work with that one is to take the remodel the existing pool and locker room areas at that end of the east end of the building, and turn that into multiple conference rooms, including office space for Veterans Administration, and Marathon County Employees Credit Union is also going into that area. Possibly, right? And that looked at everything we looked at in there, included demolition of the exterior as necessary, demolition of the existing interior, filling in the pool obviously is one of the primary things, otherwise we would be sitting quite low in the middle conference room. Furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and IT requirements that would be necessary to bring the pool because there is no IT capacity or capabilities out in that area at the moment. Any moving expenses, access control, security cameras, etc., would all be included in that. And again, that price was $3.866,510.
Any questions? All right, the HVAC.
That is that's the steam generation upgrade, correct, Supervisor Robinson?
Yep, 9 million.
The HV construction for steam removal at the North Central Campus, Phase 3.
So are we looking at? Go ahead. Please go ahead. Go ahead, Trey.
My apologies. This is Phase 3 of replacing the existing central plant boilers that were installed in 1971 in the central part, or in the central plant of the existing North Central Healthcare Campus. The first phase, we looked at taking the Lakeview Professional Plaza building, the 3-story that's at the far west end of the campus, and we removed that from the steam generation, taking the pressure off the existing system. We did that in 2020. This year's CIP project was to go ahead and design the replacement of what we call the A and B building, which is the main North Central building at 1100 Lakeview Drive, as well as the Lakeview Center building where the health department facilities currently are in place, the aquatic center as well. The true reality of the program is that steam generation is an outdated system. The new hot water boilers are much more efficient. It's one, based on the age of the system. At 50 years old, they've well exceeded their useful life, which is typical around 30 years. So we've gained an extra 20 years out of the system. We have trouble getting parts anymore, and the company that we can get parts from anymore at the moment, we have parts from them only because when they tear down and remove old existing steam boilers like we have, they save the parts for us because they know we're going to need them down the line because we're one of the few remaining systems that have this. There's also safety considerations. More than once over the past 2 winters, there have been times when maintenance and HVAC technicians have had to go into the boiler rooms and perform, I would use the term emergency, but critical maintenance needs that would be the boilers under extreme pressure and extreme heat in those situations. What we did look at was included in all this is the general construction required for all the installation, the new hot water boiling system, the piping controls. This would also tie into the existing building automation system that is currently used at all Marathon County and North Central healthcare facilities now. The demolition and disposal of the existing boilers, replacing with all new variable air volume zoning in the building so that if one area is calling for heat, not the whole building gets heat as the current system is right now. We would go with digital controls instead of pneumatics. We reuse as much as we could as we take things down from the ceiling grid and the lighting, but that would also be looked at during that time frame. And asbestos removal would also be included within this pricing. What we found, because of the age of the facility in C-Wing and E-Wing and D-Wing now, we've had North Star testing come in, and we found asbestos in the HVAC, in the joints, and in several spots for insulation. We understand that we taken into consideration, based on the square footages of what those buildings were for asbestos abatement, that we would be running into the same situation inside of these two facilities moving forward.
Any
And
questions?
total price, I'm sorry, John?
No, go ahead,
Chairman Robinson?
Go ahead.
The CIP funds requested for that would be $9,662,175.
All right. Any questions?
Yeah, this is, just to add before we take questions, this is the number one priority. To say we're on borrowed time with the boiler system right now is an understatement. We need to get this done. This has been in front of the CIP committee multiple times. Finally had the time we got the 1200, the Lakeview Professional Plaza off. We're living on borrowed time would be the shortest way to sum this up.
Kurt?
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Troy, do we know what, I know when we put in the new boilers, or the new heating system in the new tower, and the efficiencies that were gained there in comparison to the efficiencies, obviously, of a 50-year-old steam boiler system is significant. Do we have any kind of cost estimates as far as the return on our investment in cost savings on the utility side with this replacement?
We'll be running anywhere between 92 and 95% efficiency. I can tell you that. I wouldn't be able to give you an estimated number on where the efficiency at would be on the boilers now. Would be 66% now.
Are there any sustainable?
And I don't have the number. What's that?
Well, I was going to follow that up. Are there any green or sustainable initiatives that are part of this?
Yeah, very, very good question, Chairman Robinson. I would be happy to tell the committee right now that we just got a check back from Focus on Energy for the new boilers that we put in. Those of you who've been down and seen those new boilers in operation, they were the bulk of the $66,800 Focus on Energy return for placing those into that. So we would be expecting numbers probably not that high, but of comparison in percentages based on the cost and the efficiencies in the system.
Other questions? All right. The 5-year projects, are those just for information, sort of highlighting them for us?
Yes.
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 So we don't need to go through those today. All right, rolling stock.
Rolling stock, we're asking for a new 1-ton chassis for our dump truck. And obviously, we have a stainless steel box on the one that we have. We purchased that several years ago so that we could just transfer it onto a new body when we needed one. So that's what we're looking for right now is the cost of a new chassis and the cost to put that new dump body on the new chassis.
Any questions? If not, we'll move on to the North Central Healthcare A and B roof asbestos removal.
This is Craig again. This project will include the removal of the asbestos roofing materials on the A and B wings at the North Central Healthcare facility. By removing asbestos, we'll be able to put new insulation also on that roof, which is going to make it more efficient than what it is now. This project will also tie in with the CIP project from 2021 BM08C. That was to replace the membrane only on that roof, but we decided now it makes more sense to get rid of the asbestos up there. This will also tie in with the boiler project that Troy would have coming up too, because we'll have new roof penetrations going in for new boilers. There'll be other penetrations that'll probably be going away and being patched in. So this is going to make it a more complete roof package when it's all said and done, and a lot cleaner instead of piecemeal. The total cost for the project, we're removing asbestos and adding the new insulation, is fairly pricey. It came to $841,351. The asbestos removal was at $350,000 just in itself. The rest of it's insulation.
Any questions? We'll move on then to the Mount View exterior work.
Okay. The scope of this project is to repaint the exterior of Mount View Center. It's been 20 plus years since that building has been painted and caulked. This will include washing the exterior, recaulking all the construction joints, and applying 2 coats of paint. Also, this will tie in with the rest of the NCHC projects that are going on. We'll be able to bring the facility, the colors will match the rest of the facility then. We can change the colors to the new colors. Total project cost in that one is $398,530.
Any questions? If not, we'll move on to the professional plaza, HVAC.
Yeah, that project, the scope of that project is to update the building's existing outdated HVAC controls to new Johnson controls, FX controls, which would match all the other county buildings currently. It's basically, it's only building that's got the old controls yet. And it'll get rid of the pneumatics. We're replacing 42 VAV boxes that are outdated and at their end of useful life. It also balancing. Basically, it's gonna put all our buildings under one control where the HVAC guys can all use the same program to control everything. Project cost for that is $812,188.
Any questions? Where are we on renting that facility out?
Currently, the only.
Go ahead. Why don't you take it first, Terry, and then I'll follow up.
Okay. The 3rd floor is being used by special ed. The 3rd floor. The 2nd floor is vacant at this time. And the 1st floor, I believe, still has some contact tracers in it. I guess in my opinion, we are looking at in that 5-year plan or the master plan to move other programs off of River Drive and other areas into that building instead of doing a rental.
This is Administrator Leonard. I just piggyback on what Terry said. I think we need to figure out exactly how to use that building. We could, the struggle that Christie has highlighted for the committee in the past relative to private use within public buildings and how that impacts our ability to borrow, I think is important. And we need to, like Terry, Craig, and Troy have referenced, all of these projects, while certainly high value projects, high cost projects, there are opportunities for us to continue to shrink our footprint. And if we can evaluate what, if any, departments we can relocate from areas in facilities that we could otherwise divest, that's something we need to evaluate.
County board offices?
We actually do have offices already with desks in them, so we can set you up down at North Central Healthcare, but we'll charge you rent.
Are there any other questions? Kurt?
Troy, one of the questions that, we're moving all of our HVAC controls to basically one model. And are we setting ourselves up for a potential where we've got a huge, significant cost if they stop utilizing that model, or what is the useful life expectancy on those models that we're putting in? I guess, when we put all our eggs in one basket, if we drop the basket, it gets to be broken eggs.
Great point, Chairman Gibbs. Long story short, I'm in the middle of doing a controls upgrade over at UW Stevens Point at Wausau. I'm old enough to want to keep calling it UWMC. Spent some time going through the different types of building automation systems and the controls that we're looking at. And to give it a name, it's the Niagara Tritium system. That's the company that developed it. It ended up being purchased out by Honeywell a few years ago. That's the most common licensed building automation system software that's out in the system today. Having it outdated, every company that we worked with, Johnson Controls, Honeywell, to name a few, AES, have all got this system. There isn't, in fact, Johnson Controls was the last one on board. They had an exclusive rights system, and we went completely away from that. That's part of what Craig's talking about over at Lakeview Professional Plaza. To answer that succinctly, that we are not putting our eggs all in one basket, that this gets us more flexibility for long-term viability or maintenance down the road because of I don't want to use the term generic, but it's a system that's been made available to every available licensed company that can deal with the building automation systems with these with the systems that we're rolling into.
Thank you.
And you're a wise man for a part of your comments. Any other questions? That would be relating to UWMC.
That's what I thought, Chairman Robinson, but I had to grin at that one. I keep, every one time I say UWSP, I think someone's going, wait a minute, why are we doing work down at Stevens Point? It doesn't roll off the tongue like UWMC.
Thank you for that. So next we'll move, any other questions on the HVAC controls? Then we'll move on to the parking lot and storm sewer work.
Okay, this next project is at the Professional Plaza also. It would be repaving the southmost parking lot and the north parking lots. And also there's a sanitary sewer line that actually runs underneath the laundry, which comes from the north lot and runs underneath the laundry building and to a manhole on the other side of the laundry building, and it has actually collapsed and failed once already, and it's in really tough shape. So that would be rerouting the sewer line at north parking lot to a new manhole to eliminate going underneath the building. Lastly, there's some wooden stairs that goes to the south parking lot from the south entrance of the plaza. And the wooden stairs don't meet code. They're made out of railroad ties. There's no handrails. There's areas where people can get their feet caught in if they got high heels on. So that would be replacing that stairway with a new set of concrete metal railings meeting code. Cost for that project is $178,099.
Are there any questions?
Sounds like all of the board on this, but we have to redo the parking lots and the stairs because the sewer line runs underneath them. So we have to dig it up to fix the sewer line and then replace the stairs and the parking lots after.
All right, any other questions on these projects? If not, the issue before us is to advance these to the capital improvement process, of which this committee will, after tonight, be engaged in. So I would need that motion. Chair Gibbs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess just one comment, and I appreciate all of the work that Facilities and Capital Management did on all of these issues. But when you sit there and add 1 million here and 178,000 there and then 9 million here, pretty soon you get to be a pretty big number. We're almost at 27 million, and I do understand, that a lot of these projects have historically been brought to the CIP committee, but in some cases put off. So I would make a motion that we move this forward to the CIP process, period.
Is there a second?
McEwen, second.
Motion by Gibbs, seconded by McEwen to advance the projects to the CIP process. Is there any discussion? Lance, I would just ask that as we look at these projects, some of these projects are related to a multi-county facility, and if there is the ability under our agreements to look at recouping or having sharing in some of those costs, hope that we would look at that as part of the budgeting process.
We will do that, and we will, as part of the staff recommendation, bring back proposed funding sources for each of the projects.
Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor of approval of advancing these projects will signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. That motion carries. Thank you. So the next is the rolling stock timeline and purchase of equipment, and we have in the packet the Parks Department rolling stock request for approximately $961,000, and we heard from others last month. And do you have an update? I thought that it was not as severe of a problem as we had heard.
Yeah, and I updated the packet I've gotten back from all 4 departments that we talked to, and I'll go to that right now. What we had done is asked Facilities, Parks, Sheriff, and Highway, and you had already talked to Facilities. Their request is larger than what we had, but they confirmed that they could order in January and for delivery in July. Parks, I added their request in there as well. They can order in 2021 for delivery in 2022, and currently payment could be upon delivery. Sheriff, we have a new gentleman that works in that, Ryan Weber, but he was able to provide us information, but it is pending on verifying it with some other staff in the Sheriff's Department. But we are looking at probably ordering in 2021 with receiving in 2022 payment on delivery, but they were going to follow up with that. And the amount for their rolling stock request is approximately 10 squads. And then the highways request is attached in the packet, and they would order in 2021, receive in 22, and currently payment would be upon delivery. So ordering this year with delivery in 2022, but at this time we feel that we could make payment upon delivery, subject to change depending on.
So a question, do we have the ability to place orders without prior approval of the projects, or do we need specific action?
What I would suggest that we do, knowing that we have the departments, they know their order, they've already are submitting them to the CIP, in order to make sure that you can order and possibly, right now they don't have to pay for them until they're delivered, but that could change as well. My suggestion is to establish the amounts that we have already put in the CIP, amend the 2021 CIP for these items with a funding source to be, if needed, advance from the general fund, so that if that would be subject to change, you're not going to redo this whole process, and then roll your 2022 CIP program as is, and look for funding sources to essentially pay ourselves back for anything you would have to advance in 2021. That way, then you don't have to worry that they've been established as a 2021 rolling stock, and you don't go to the 2022 at the county board deliberations and cut those projects out, because then you need to make the commitment, you need to be able to pay for them if possible. My simple solution, it's not simple because this is a little different than we've ever done, amend the 2021 for these rolling stock items. If needed, advance the money from the general fund, and then when the 2022 CIP program comes through the county board, establish a funding source to reimburse whatever funds needed to be paid out of the advance back to the general fund.
Kurt?
Thank you, Christie. I think that as a general statement, that is a fair idea. The question becomes if any of those capital purchases were going to be utilizing bonding, is that become problematic when we're bonding or we're allocating those funds in the 2021 CIP and not technically paying and using reserves to pay for them now, and then wanted to bond for them in 2022. I don't think that's going to be even possible.
No, there's a reimbursement resolution, but you would still have to have approved it for 2022. So no, they would not be able to most likely be borrowed for in 2022. But what we would then do when we're looking at funding, we need to look at making sure that those are being paid with CIP funds, not borrowed funds. Or
So
in the case of the 2021 projects that we borrowed for, if they are incorporated in that, there's a possibility there may be limited funds available, but it's not an elegant solution. It's just trying to get it done so that you don't have a, yeah.
All I'm stating is
No.
all I'm
you're
stating
exactly right.
is we take one option off the table. Should that be an option that we needed to look at for the 2022 CIP projects?
Yep.
So is eligibility for borrowing based upon when the project is encumbered or expensed or paid for? So we can, we can look, if we've entered a contract but we haven't received delivery, is it based upon the date of the contract?
What we're doing is amending the 2021 CIP, so you can't borrow because we've already created a 2021 CIP borrowing, and so we have funds that we've done that for. So we would have to take a look, but you've really going to need to take a look at whether or not you would be able to do that, because they're really not a 2022 CIP anymore. They're a 2021 CIP.
Is there the ability to amend the 2021 KIP to make it a 2-year KIP in delineating projects for delivery in 2022, therefore allowing the ordering in 2021 for the sake of making them eligible for future borrowing? And
I think the issue then becomes you're still making them a known project today, and the bonding for them would have to be identified at the time when you're contracting for them.
But if we're phasing as we did with, bear with me, with North Central, we approved a project with phases, and we didn't borrow for all of the phases at once. We borrowed on an incremental basis. Is there the ability of us to take that concept and apply that to a longer-term KIP, which is one of the things we'll be talking about later in this meeting. I'm just wondering if there are some workarounds that would allow us the maximum flexibility relative to our capital budget.
I think for this particular issue, the ability for you to establish them as a 2021 project with a funding source to be continued into 2022 at least allows those departments to make sure that their order can get in. And since funding is upon delivery, I think as long as we can, unless it changes, you could put them in the 2021 CIP without funding. Because right now, everybody needs their money in 2022, but that could change. So what I was thinking is at least advance the funding source from the general fund right now. That way, they have the flexibility to get those orders in at a set price, and you can pay for them. But as we roll out the 2022 CIP program, knowing that we kind of owe ourselves, and then you have the flexibility in the next year's program to pay the county back based on, not with bonding, but there's typically you have anywhere from $2 to $5 million available.
Don't get me wrong, I totally understand, our process, and we normally have $2 to $5 million roll over out of unutilized funds. The point that the only point that I was making is doing that today does not, potentially does not make those eligible for bonding. Therefore, we've limited one option, or eliminated one option, should that be necessitated for future.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Craig.
Thank you. The longer this goes on, the more confused I'm getting. But what I know, Terry had told us that when he orders his vehicle, that truck, that they have to pay when they order, not when they receive it, or has that changed?
According to Christie, and that's changed.
I think Terry is on, but I think the belief was that highway and parks would have to pay up front as opposed to on delivery. And Terry had referenced that at the last meeting that his belief was he would be able to pay upon delivery, but Christie has been able to confirm that in fact parks, highway, and facilities all believe that the current process would simply require them to order now and pay upon delivery. But Christie's point is that that process, as designated by the vendor, could change. I hope that answers your question.
Right. So at this point, I would just make sure there's a funding source, but theoretically, if they go on order today, they've been notified that they would pay $0 today anyway, but that way I didn't have to come back and ask for a funding source so that they had to cancel their order.
But we can't sign an order without funding, so we've got, therein lies our conundrum. We can't commit future county boards, so we have to work on that workaround, if you will. Is this a time-sensitive issue, or do we have a month in which to resolve it?
We were planning on bringing a resolution in July.
So we can have that at our next meeting. So that'll give us a chance to look at it a little bit more detail.
The other question I would have is, what are we talking as far as the total costs and all of the rolling stocks that we're talking about for highway and potentially the other departments as far as committing out of reserves would be also helpful.
You want about 1.6 on the updated one. It's on page 157 of the packet.
Any other questions? If not, then we'll look for a resolution at the next meeting that would execute the process we've described with the exact amount from the commitment from the general reserves. Any other questions? All right, if not, that takes us into the interesting discussion of the day, which is what is the process for the 2022 KIP plan? And later tonight, we will have a resolution before the county board that will remove the capital improvement committee from the process. And I've had a discussion with at least one supervisor who wanted to make sure that we understand that it wasn't the KIP committee that failed us. It was the KIP process that has failed us. The KIP committee has done very good work over the years, and we'll make that point tonight. But my thought is that what we ought to do, and I throw this out just for discussion, and Supervisor Leahy and I have had a couple of brief conversations, but is that we take our July educational meeting and look at the issues, and we break them down, break the capital projects down into 4 categories, and rolling stock is one of them. It may be moot at that time because we may have resolved that issue earlier in the month. But then the whole issue of IT projects, because we've typically done a carve out of the projects, and I think part of that discussion could be one that we had before the meeting of when we get into software leases or any of those, can we capitalize any of those? So we could have that discussion. We then ought to be looking at a facilities maintenance an account or category, much along the lines of the projects that were outlined today. And then the final category would be all other projects. Should we have any that are new that are not necessarily maintenance related? And I'm not sure of what all the projects are from the various committees. There may not be many in that area, but that we would look at those, try to categorize those, see what the totals are, and talk about what sort of parameters we might want to set for this year. Are some of them this year's projects or next year's projects in light of the scope? But I throw that out just for discussion, and there's room for change. Any thoughts? Chair Gibbs.
The two things that, maybe there's 2 subgroups under facilities maintenance and or expansion. In other words, it's one thing to replace a roof, do tuck pointing, replacing HVAC when it's at end of life. However, if we're going to expand a facility and adding potentially or changing its total use, I would say that that's no longer a facility necessary maintenance. That's a new project, and I guess I label it a little bit different. I label it rolling stock IT projects, facilities maintenance, but a subcategory under that is necessary maintenance, and then new projects, and then all other new projects.
Other thoughts?
Supervisor Fischer here.
Go ahead.
I do agree with that last statement by Chair Gibbs, that we basically want to make sure we're identifying these appropriately to stay away from including maintenance or ongoing necessary upgrades from what's effectively a new process. And I think that was the initial idea of breaking out the buckets to make sure that we've identified new or improved processes versus keeping being consistent with where we are with our current buildings and keeping their life up to date. So I do 100% agree with that.
Supervisor Leahy, do you have any comments given your work on that work group?
I agree as well. I mean, I think identifying those different categories or buckets is going to be a very good, necessary, efficient change in the process in general, and will help us make better decisions and use what we've got and look at some of those things and hopefully not let things fall by the wayside. Are you looking for us to delve into this a bit more, or are you saying our next July educational meeting, that's going to be the only thing on the agenda is this process, and we're really going to get into it there? I guess I was a little confused by that statement.
We don't have all of the projects before us today, so it's hard for us to rank them and have that discussion today. So what we're looking for, the sort of the outline of the process or the guidance, Jerry, thank you, Kurt, that we would be using. And I think we would dedicate as much of that meeting as we need for it, barring something that came up that we didn't foresee. But the intent would be to take that July informational meeting and really drill down in the KIP. If you have thoughts on how we can organize that process, it would be welcome. But I think committees have until the 1st of July in which to make those recommendations as part of the process. So we're still within that approval period. And I know some of the committees are meeting later this month. Is that
follow up?
Please.
Yes, thank you. Just wondering, I guess, and this is maybe more of a question for those who have been involved in the work group and Leonard specifically, do you think we should meet prior to that July educational meeting then as a work group to, reacclimate and maybe just look at this process a little bit more within the work group? Or are we ready to just tackle this at the Finance Committee meeting?
This is Administrator Leonard. I certainly think another meeting of the work group, it certainly couldn't hurt to flush out kind of the comments that were made today. I will say, I reviewed that kind of that working document that we've been using. It's very similar to what kind of the buckets that have been talked about here today. So I don't see much in terms of difference of opinion as to next step, but we can certainly continue to the work on that draft.
Okay, yeah, that would be great, and we can talk later about scheduling and stuff. My only other comment, I guess, then for the next time that we all talk about this as a group is it might really be beneficial for us all to attend in person. These are some really complicated, lengthy discussions, and we're switching a process from something that has been in place for some time. So, and I know I say this coming from my home virtually right now, but I do intend to attend the next meeting in person, and it really might behoove us to all be in the same space and to be able to talk about this together in one space. So just a thought.
Thank you for that suggestion, and I would ask that members try to be here for that critical discussion. Anything else? Any other thoughts on it? I think we have an approach. Then the question becomes, and this is more of a long-term discussion in more ways than one, but how do we move the KIP project and KIP program from a one-year planning horizon to a multiple-year planning horizon? And while it is a 5-year KIP, we've never looked beyond year one. That lets us smooth out some of these things a little bit more. Are there some things that you would like to know in the development of a KIP? And I think we could maybe take this process this year to try to identify and fill in those longer term projects where we know where there's funding to give a better idea. But there are a number of counties and communities across the state that truly have 5-year plans that they put a little bit more time and effort and attention in it. it helps with their borrowing and planning process. Any thoughts? Chair Gibbs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, you know, we 2 years ago, almost maybe 3 years ago, we looked at an inventory of the total facilities and or assets that the county has, and we acquired a program that is supposed to give us, you know, horizons as far as end of life, and I think, you know, I guess I'm looking to facilities and capital management as to an update on where we sit. I know there was some challenges with the beginning use of that program, but I think that can assist us in setting up a 5-year program that says, okay, we've got a potential boiler system that's going to reach its end of life in 3 years from now. Okay, well, now we can obviously identify that project should be on the horizon, and it's $2.8 million, whatever that is. You know, so I guess I'd be looking for an update as to where we're at with the utilization of that upgraded, that program that was supposed to be able to provide us life expectancies on all of the facilities that the county has.
Terry, are you on?
Yep, I am on. Yes, we are, I would say, 98% good to go with that program. It's rather labor intensive, but it does work, and we can pull up anything that you would like to see. We have been looking at it and using it just to basically test it to see where it's at. The issue with it is there's so much stuff out there that if we pull up what should be replaced this year and is on due, you're going to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's a little overwhelming to look at first, but yeah, to give you an update on that, we have it pretty much straightened out. And if you would like, I'm sure we can give you a presentation on how it works.
Lance?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Administrator Leonard. I met with Christy and Terry earlier this week, and I think to your question and Chair Gibbs' comment, I mean, the first thing that, from a staff perspective that we've seen is we as staff need to put a lot more effort into our 5-year CIP planning. To your point, Chair Robinson, I think we're all focused, as Terry alluded to, on the things that are right in front of us this year. And in fact, we're talking about amending the 2021 CIP quite a bit. We've been talking about that already this year. And I have no doubt that'll continue. So on the front end, engaging earlier, and this was something that the work group has talked about, putting together a calendar that really envisions earlier engagement with staff, and then also something that hasn't taken place here in Marathon County with respect to that 5-year plan, which we do have. And that 5-year plan is put together by Facilities and Capital Management and is available online. But we haven't engaged the county board or the HR Finance and Property Committee even with that plan to put it on, get the committee really engaged in that process and understand kind of what that future looks like. So you see some of these big projects coming more in advance than the year before you see them. So our initial plan with that work group was putting together a calendar that would have a CIP, what I'll call our traditional process, which is our budget process for the next year's CIP, be truly distinct from the 5-year CIP process, so that there's at least a little bit of break in time between the presentations of those two documents to the HR committee and also ultimately to the county board. We did a fair amount of research, staff did, looking at other counties and their 5-year CIP plans, and I think we have some opportunity to adopt a couple of process changes that I think will get at really your desire, which is greater knowledge on the part of policymakers about what is really what the future looks like and what funding sources might be available, so that we can better plan in terms of budget. So we've made some headway, but there's still a fair amount of work to be done on that 5-year what those two separate cycles look like.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman. Terry, I can appreciate, that because we haven't had or had the use of a total overall inventory, the scope of stuff that may be on the end of life at this point, but we can't begin to digest the complexity or the problem of it unless we understand it. So, I appreciate that, but I think, the Finance Committee is willing to take a look at, all right, we can't get to point B without getting to point A first. So, I think, understanding, how that program is used and how, where is there potential leniencies, if you will, on an end-of-life item. So in other words, yes, this is an end-of-life, this is technically it's end-of-life. I had, in my former life in the tax accounting business, I had end-of-life on a photocopier. Well, I used it 8 years past its end of use of life. So with no potential increased cost in replacement, no question. I guess I'm looking to you to at least provide us with some education on that program and the information that we're already gathered in that program.
Any other comments? I think I'd just like to second Chair Gibbs' comments and on that, having lived in a house that was built in 1883, but moved on. But I understand that concept. You try to stretch things out, and the preventative maintenance programs that are driven by this program should extend the useful life of many things without problems. But I think it's when they begin to pop up, we have to have the ability to respond, and I think that's where we're all heading. So, Terry, we'll ask that you at one of our upcoming meetings come in with that report or that presentation, and we'll figure out how we'll use it. So what I'm sort of hearing is that the goal is to develop that long-term plan, focus in on our immediate needs today, for if we can get a 1 or 2 year capital improvement budget this year, that would be a success, and then we would look at, on a longer term basis, really getting into a legitimate 5-year capital plan. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's consistent with the meeting Christy and I and Terry had earlier. I don't think we're going to be able to give you the 5-year CIP that we would like to give you this year, but we'll be able to show you the process that we think will get us there. But certainly in the near future.
Allison and Jonathan, I'd ask you for any comments on that.
I do believe that our previous conversations were truly around including staff in applying, gathering the information to make sure that that's being presented to the board to make proper decisions based on their knowledge base of what they really need to see and what they see on a daily basis. So I believe that syncs up.
Any other thoughts, comments? All right, I think we have a process by which we can move ahead, and we'll have that update from Terry. We'll work on scheduling that. Anything else on the capital improvement project approval process? right, policy issues, discussions, and committee determination, nothing. The next meeting is July 6th at 3:30. Any other announcements? If not, we are at item 8, adjournment. Moved by Gibbs, seconded by
McEwen.
McEwen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries. Thank you.